In this video, I will share with you a game that I played in the Pegasus system opening, and I think this is a very good game to learn from. So the game started with me playing pawn to d4, and then on the next move I played knight to d2, which is the start of my own opening, the Pegasus system opening. This was a game against a very strong opponent, I would say. I mean, 2120. That's definitely not bad. And as soon as I played knight to d2, my opponent immediately started to think, which is a huge benefit with this opening. Like, none of your opponents will have anything prepared against this. After some thinking, he responded with d5, but then they are basically just walking straight into the opening theory for me. So that's what I really like about this opening. I'm just going to play pawn to e3. And then usually I'm looking to play pawn to c4 on the next move. Since this was a very good opponent, they are playing what is one of the best things that you can try against the Pegasus system opening, which is to play a very early c5. And I wanted to talk about this move for a moment, because c5 is a very common counterattack that black can play against any d4 opening. And I figured out quite an easy way to deal with it, which seems a little bit strange, which is that if they play c5, I literally recommend to just take it. They take back with the bishop, and this looks strange because it looks like we are helping them develop, but in reality this bishop is not really doing anything on this diagonal. And on the next move I just play pawn to a3. They continue with whatever they are doing, and then I play pawn to b4. And immediately, yes, we developed their bishop, but now we are winning a tempo against their bishop. Their bishop has to move, and we immediately get this very good diagonal for our dark squared bishop. Not that diagonal, this diagonal, yes. And we want this diagonal because in this opening, our dark squared bishop sometimes struggles being developed here. So it is the fianchetto that we want. We want to get the bishop here. So all of this for me is still opening preparation. Then I continue with knight to f3, just a normal development move. And then my opponent played pawn to a5. And pawn to a5 is again one of the best ways to play against this. As I said, a very strong opponent. There are multiple things I can do here, but what I decided to do at this moment was to play for a space advantage. And that is what I will be mostly teaching you during this video. How to notice that you are getting a space advantage and how to use a space advantage to get a winning position. And what do I mean when I talk about a space advantage? Whenever we talk about space in chess, we are basically talking about squares. And a space advantage basically means that we are taking away squares from the opponent, and the more squares that we can take away, the more space that we are grabbing. So this is a nice pawn move here, pawn to b5, taking away 2 squares from this knight, and I basically just want to make the development very annoying for my opponent. I want to stop them from having a normal development. So pawn to b5. My opponent countered with pawn to a4. I'm not really sure what it is doing. I don't seem to really understand what their goal was there, but it's all fine. And then in this opening, you should always go for c4. And c4 looks very strange, especially in this position, because it looks like everything is still wide open. But our king here on e1, we need to realize that this is actually a very safe king. There is no way for black to attack this. This diagonal for the bishop doesn't work. This diagonal for the queen doesn't really do anything. So we are just perfectly fine. And by playing this move, we are immediately counter-attacking in the center. So my opponent decided to take, and I was very surprised the moment that they decided to take this pawn. Because of course, I have my knight ready to recapture. And now the problems for black are just getting worse and worse and worse with every single move. Because this pawn is taking away 2 squares, and now this bishop has also just lost its square. So my opponent again has to move the pieces, and this is the space advantage. If you see that your opponent has all of their pieces on the first 3 ranks, and even there they are struggling to find squares, that is how you know you have a space advantage. So pay good attention to this. These 2 squares are in my control because of the pawn. these two squares are mostly in my control because of my pieces. So basically the black pieces are getting very boxed in. They are very limited. They barely have any squares to move to. And that is how we know we have a space advantage. At this point, I really started thinking for a long time. I was trying to figure out the best middle game plan. Because when you have a space advantage, you should play very carefully because it's also easy to lose your space advantage. What we don't want to do in these positions is we don't want to make a move that gives the opponent more squares for their pieces. We basically want to keep putting pressure, and we also don't want to trade. So I calculated for a long time all the things I could do with maybe capturing the queen, capturing the knight, jumping my knight to the b6 square, all of those things. But then I realized if I just go for a massive trade, then the space advantage disappears because there is no problem in space if they have no pieces anymore. So I decided to play queen c2, basically just play an optimization move. I get the option to play rook here and basically take away another square for them, try to take away the d7 and d8 squares from their pieces. Plus this queen can also help for a future checkmate threat, which actually ended up being important. And this is how you see that I think we are still very early in the game, but white is basically already completely winning. Because black is just completely running out of squares. Rook to d1, and then they are just shuffling the pieces, struggling to find anything to do. And as you can see, it's already plus 2.4 according to the evaluation, meaning completely winning for white. And here I misplayed a little bit. I have to say this is not the best game that I have ever played. I got a 93% accuracy with a brilliant move, but it definitely wasn't perfect this game. Here, basically, we are already completely winning because of the space advantage, because of a very nice sequence. This is not what I played in the game. In the game, I played knight d6. There is a way better move here. If you want, you can try to find it. I calculated it, but I didn't calculate deeply enough. So when you have a space advantage, usually what we should look for is some type of attack. I was looking into the move knight g5. This did not happen in the game, by the way. As I said, I played knight d6. I was looking for that checkmate, and knight g5 is a huge threat, a very important threat, because yeah, if black just plays whatever move, I'll just play a bad move for them, we take the knight, and if they take back, that is checkmate. So that was basically the threat. The threat from knight to g5 is that we have a 1-2 move checkmate threat, and I calculated that my opponent basically has to play h6 and attack my knight. I would then take their knight. They cannot recapture this, because if they do, that's still checkmate, so they cannot recapture this. So they would have to capture the knight, then I would capture the bishop, then they would capture with the queen. And I looked at this position, and here is where I stopped. I said in my calculation, no, I won't go for this. It's just a bunch of trades and I don't win anything. Well, I should have just calculated one move deeper, which is often the case, because we are still doing quite well here. There is, for example, knight to b6. This rook is under attack. Rook has to move, and black is really struggling. There is so much pressure. There is pressure here. I think we even have the move, maybe queen c7, maybe even another move, but putting pressure on that bishop. But I just didn't see everything. This was a very big calculation. So I decided not to go for this, which would have been a very good move. Instead, I decided to play knight d6. I thought this was a possible way to try to use my space advantage. To attack their queen, basically take away more squares. And my plan was just, let's just force them to trade a bishop for a knight. Because since we have a very open position, with open I mean there are a lot of diagonals towards their king, and an open position, it's good if we can give up a knight for a bishop. And that bishop was also an important defender on the knight. So all of that was my reasoning here. All right. Then my opponent just grabbed the free pawn, which, yes, there was a free pawn here for a while, but that pawn just completely doesn't matter, really. And then here I realized, okay, now this is clearly time to play knight to g5, because we have the exact same threat that we have before, which is that we can just take that knight, and then we can give a checkmate on the next move. So it is a very strong threat. Again, if they just ignore it, it's take and checkmate on the next move. If they play h6, which did not happen in the game, by the way, they played something else. I could still take here, they would take there, and then this position would still be beneficial for me. I calculated so many things here. Like, I looked into things like rook here, which I'm not sure if it works. I looked into things like pawn here, trying to activate my rook to do another actual, wow, I see that would have been a brilliant move to activate my queen there. Like, I was just looking for checkmate. Like, every single move I was thinking about was checkmate. But this didn't happen in the game. They didn't play knight h6, pawn h6. Instead, they played pawn e5. And I was incredibly confused by this move because we have a very nice move here with white. A rook takes f6. We just take that knight. That knight is the important defensive piece, and they cannot capture back the rook. That's checkmate. So basically, we just got a free knight here. But they were losing anyways. Like, whatever black tries here, they are losing. This is just the way that they decided to lose, by pushing that pawn and giving that free knight. So here I knew, like, okay, I am up in material. This is great. The only downside was that during this entire game, I was thinking and calculating all of this. I think I had about 1 minute left here. My opponent had like 6 minutes left or 7 minutes left, since this was a rapid game. And yeah, I was running low on time. Here I found an interesting sequence at basically this very moment. This moment I calculated and I tanked all of my time. I think I went to about 20 seconds because I thought that I had a checkmate in 8 moves here. I saw a checkmate in 8 moves, which actually works, and that ended up being how the game ends. So I used a lot of time here. What I realized was that I can take this bishop to distract the queen here. And then I looked into the move rook takes f7. This move wins the game, but it's a bit complicated. I saw a checkmate sequence which happened, so it worked, but it's quite complicated. The plan is that we just take this pawn, and they have to react to this. They have to react to this. If they don't, we will just be opening everything up, and we will also have a checkmate. So they take, I give a check. And I calculated all of this, and I was a bit unsure since I was so low on time. But I saw there that if they played rook back to f8, that would be checkmate. That was what I calculated a couple of moves ago. I also realized that if they played king to g7, I would not have a checkmate, but I would be capturing that rook, and then I would still be having an attack there. But they played rook to f8. They didn't see the checkmate. And basically from this point, there is just a checkmate sequence, which was queen check. King has to go up. The rook cannot block because that's just checkmate in 2 moves with the queen. So king has to go up. Bishop takes. Here they can sacrifice the queen if they want. But if they don't, they are just walking into checkmate. And then this is a quite simple checkmate in 3 moves. Check with the queen. King is forced to take the knight. And then check with the pawn. And this is where the opponent resigned. Because their king is basically completely trapped. All they can try to do is take with the rook, and then there is a very beautiful checkmate. I'm a bit disappointed they didn't let me play this, which would have been pawn takes f4. The pawn giving a checkmate to the king, which is just completely trapped because of the queen and the bishop. So I wanted to share this to show you how to use that positional advantage, and I hope that you want to try out this opening in one of your games as well.